Good morning, everyone. As this panel is, we're here to discuss how to engage audiences across channels. We're going to be talking about multi-platform approaches, inclusivity, targeting, regionally adapting, as well as maybe trying to figure out who Jake Paul's going to fight next. First, we just want to thank brand innovators and Sony for having us today. This space is very cool. I am Steve Pearson. I'm moderating this panel. I am the VP of Get Creative and Content Operations at USA Today Network, where we serve over 200 publications plus USA Today. But enough about me. Let's talk about these wonderful panelists. To my right is Sam Johnson, who's the Director of Sports Marketing at Paramount Plus, where he oversees go-to-market strategy for sports properties such as the NFL, PGA Tour, Big Ten college football, NCAA tournaments, amongst others. Been with P Plus for since 2019, right?
Yep, 5 years.
5 years. And you have launched the first sports campaign, I believe. Is that on?
I think it's on now.
We're on.
Yes.
All right, we're good. Thanks for joining us, Sam. And then to his right is Simona Ezell, who's the Broadcasting Marketing Lead at Experian, overseeing brand building, performance marketing, and that's linear TV, streaming, audio, social, and now The Ring.
Hello.
Through a very cool partnership they just did with Netflix and Better, all around the Tyson Jake Paul boxing mega event. Excited to welcome you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's kick this off. We're going to kind of cascade down in through sort of the channels that we were talking about. Let's start with multi-platform approach. Sam, we're going to kick it over to you. Certainly not a one-size-fits-all sort of situation. Can you tell how Paramount Plus is approaching adapting creative across different platforms?
Yeah, so if you aren't aware, the NFL and CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Don't blame me if you don't know that. It's something that we're working on. And so over the past few years, we've developed a strategy of using CBS sports talent and NFL talent together to carry that message for us. And it's something that's proven to work really well. In particular, amongst NFL fans on big screen environments when we show those types of commercials. So when we entered this year, we wanted to better understand and better approach the season to say, okay, let's continue this core strategy that's working really well with our core audience. But what are some of the ways we can adapt our message and our creative styling to better fit more younger, more diverse audiences, more mobile-focused audiences, and see if we can expand the growth of the awareness of our product. And so we have some spots to show. I think the first one is just that. It's the CBS sports talent and an NFL star coming together and carrying our core message. And like I said, this is for core NFL fans. If you're a fan of the league, you're going to recognize these guys and totally get in on the joke. So I think we have that one to share first.
Would you like to try the NFL on CBS? Streams live on Paramount Plus.
I'll have the number 1.
Did someone say number 1?
I said number 2.
No, it's 2.
No, the number 2.
The number 2 is the NFL on CBS.
Streams live on Paramount Plus.
What?
You mean Watt, JJ?
Not a watt, a 1.
Me?
Who's Tua what?
Tua?
Watt.
Who? What are you talking about?
Watt is talking about the NFL on CBS. Streams live on Paramount Plus.
What?
Watt. The NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus.
So if you're an NFL fan, you get the joke almost immediately, right? You're familiar with J.J. Watt, you're familiar with Tua. Tua what? Watt, right? You're getting in on it. The message still comes across in a really fun way. Takes a little bit longer for the story to build. It's built for that type of environment, unskippable environments where you're going to sit with that creative for a longer amount of time. So we also have the Easter egg in there of Linda Dong, who's a rising influencer, in particular on TikTok.
Love her.
Thank you. We do too. And just kind of a little nugget there, right, for additional audiences. And then we expanded our relationship with Linda to build similarly messaged units, but built for different properties in specific YouTube and mobile environments. And so that's the next one that we have to run.
My crush just texted me he's watching the NFL and CBS streaming live on Paramount Plus. Hey!
Babe, you have got to stop doing that.
I just love watching the NFL and CBS streaming live on Paramount Plus with you.
Is the plan okay?
No, it's dead.
Right, so it's punched in, it's quicker, the text is bigger, it's built for those type of environments. So even though the core message of our campaign is the NFL on CBS streams on Paramount Plus, and it comes through on both, when we think about the different audiences that we're trying to get in front of and the way that we're delivering that message for the different channels becomes really important and something we really push for this year.
No, that's great. I kind of think about this too. You bring up some points around sort of the versioning aspect and finding that. I'm curious, Simona, on your take of this. Like, how's Experian using their creative team to manage that balance between customization and operational efficiencies? Right, like it's.
Yes. Well, Experian has evolved a lot in the past couple of years. Everyone thinks of us as the credit bureau, the brand persona, a little rigid, you don't want to get too close. And if you do, in the past, all you could get was basically your credit report and scores. Now we're working towards becoming a personal finance super app where people can actually take control. You can boost your credit score, you can save money with products like Auto Marketplace, or you can even let Experian find and cancel unwanted subscriptions for you. So we're working on getting that message out, and like you said earlier, it's not a one size fits all. I think any of our new products and value propositions apply to different people at different stages throughout their journeys. We just introduced something called No Ding Decline, where basically you can see if you get approved for a credit card without getting your credit score ding, just for trying. So this obviously would apply to somebody who's in the market for a credit card, or is looking for something more specific, more custom for them. So with that, obviously comes the challenge of finding the right people at the right time. Like every marketer here, we're dealing with audience fragmentation, and obviously very important to work with our creative agencies. We have a creative agency in-house, and then we have another one more focused on digital. Our goal is basically to make sure that our creative messaging is applied to the platforms, and also that targeting is a very important component. From an operational perspective, I'll just say, it depends what the goal is. If we're trying to acquire new customers, we'll work on building incremental reach across different platforms. If we're trying to re-engage existing Experian members who maybe have been dormant and don't know that we have auto insurance yet, we'll retarget them. If somebody has been engaging and we know they're active on the app, we'll basically just suppress that audience because why bother them and waste our dollars? So it really all varies, I guess.
No, that's great. Yeah, and it kind of leading into sort of the next layer of this is obviously we're talking multi-channel, but then obviously within multi-channel comes multi-audience within that, right? Kind of want to kick this back over to you. Specifically, we had a really great conversation leading into this day, talking about sort of the approach towards more diverse audiences, right? And making sure that we're not, leaving the underrepresented kind of out of the conversation. Could you explain how Experian has kind of expanded that messaging and towards the multicultural audience, and what kind of results are you guys seeing?
Yeah, that's been a big focus for us. I believe that you cannot market to Gen Zs without a multicultural strategy. I assume we all know, like, Gen Z are the most culturally diverse generation in American history. 48% are racially and culturally diverse. 1 in 4 is Hispanic. So, with that knowledge, we try to be fine-tuning our messaging and our strategy so that, we recognize the cultural nuances. And I think it all starts with really just listening. Gen Z are not shy, to tell you what they think about your brand. They engage with your brand if you approach them at the right time and the right way. So listening, making sure that we understand and we reflect their realities in our messaging. And then partnering with the right influencers, content creators. They love, messaging that is in culture or in language or bilingual. They're a very slippery audience to get. I feel like they pop in different areas, and it's very important to catch them at the right time. Their attention span is very short. So you have about, 5 seconds to until they skip you. So, with that knowledge, for us, it took a process of planning and listening and partnering with the right people, with diverse media companies, even within our media partnerships. We work with Televisa Univision, with Telemundo. We pay great attention to insights, and then we also just listen to them. We listen to content creators. We worked with, Lily Pons, Jasmine. Most recently, we partnered with musical artist Prince Royce, also known as the Prince of Bachata, who introduced a great initiative that Experian had in providing $10 million of debt relief within the Hispanic community. And he introduced this during the Latin Music Billboard Awards. And not only just talked about look at us, Experian, we're doing great things, but this was kind of our way in to say, hey, you can take control of your financial future. Debt is something that worries people, it weighs on you, and then it slows you down on your way to achieving your goals. And I loved how Prince Royce got into it, and he talked about, growing up in the Bronx and his family working hard and the hustle and the game and just keeping your eye on the prize. And I think this is the kind of message that we want to put out there and we want to continue to build on.
Yeah, if I could, I think what you said about listening and learning about these audiences is really interesting too. Paramount Plus also has the UEFA Champions League, and there's a competitor of ours that broadcasts Champions League games in Spanish in America. So when we first got those rights, one of the things that we assumed was Hispanic audiences are going to go to that platform to watch the sport. Let's deprioritize this for ourselves and go after other pockets of sports fans. And what we saw over the years was we continued to see strong growth in subscription from those audiences against the grain of the assumption that we had. And so over the past years, despite not being able to actually market in that language, we've still prioritized that audience within our buying and within our mix, because it just went against the grain of our assumptions to start. And I think a lot of that happens with Gen Z too, of how we assume about them. And they're young, they don't have a ton of buying power yet, but it doesn't mean that you deprioritize them completely, because just like millennials hate the way that we're portrayed, they hate that too, and they're going to grow up to be your real consumer. So I think it's important to check some of that too, right? When we're thinking about our planning, I think that's important.
Don't assume anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, not safe at all. So kind of thinking about that too is, especially when we're talking about creative and, how we're deploying on all of these different channels into these different audiences, how do we strike the balance kind of between targeting specific groups, obviously knowing there's costs to those, but then also being inclusive within broader campaigns? How are we approaching that? I'll start with you, Sam.
Yeah, I think it comes in a couple of different ways, right? A lot of the audience pieces that we use comes on the research side versus the execution side sometimes, of trying to understand what the value props that work for those various audiences actually are versus, like I said, some of our assumptions about various audiences. And then from a pure media perspective, I think it's a balance of both, right? Like, if we're prioritizing certain growth audiences, there's absolutely going to be, line items within our plans that are specifically going in front of those consumers, publishers that are endemic to those groups. But I've also tried to stop worrying and love the algorithm in a way, and trust that if we're building creative that speaks to those audiences, they'll find those audiences. The algorithms are literally built to do that. So if you're putting the pieces in first from a creative perspective that resonate with those specific audiences, I find that they generally find their home with the people who will engage with that content versus trying to force feed it into specific, into specific budgets or things like that. Not to say that those aren't valuable, right? If you're prioritizing a growth audience, it's important to put the spend and put the time and creative effort into those audiences. It's a balance of both, in my opinion.
Totally. So.
So we have a tiered approach. We have a layer of creative, we call it tier 1 or 1.5, which is very much brand focused, and it speaks to wider audiences, and we run it in high reach live sports. We try to align it with different types of cultural moments, different types of events that we know have wide appeal. And with these creatives, we're building the brand persona so that we're saying, hey, Experian is here, approachable. You can go in the app, do all these things. We're giving you control, right? We're very careful, with cultural nuances. We have diversity, we have talent, and the way we build it, we try to generate that mass appeal. Like, for example, when we partnered with Travis Kelce, right before he started dating Taylor Swift.
Nice.
That was a genius move, I will say. We didn't even know. Actually, the rumors were out, and we're like, no way, there's no way she's going to ever go out with him. So. Yeah. Anyways, that's kind of like our top tier level. And then we go in with frequency in content, in language, in culture, in platform, and we get pretty specific at that level. And that's also the level where we can optimize very easily. We give those creatives about 2-3 weeks of runway, and then we have obviously benchmarks already established. And then we just kind of go from there with our mix, with our messaging, a lot of social listening, I think very important for us, and just building that ecosystem of influencers and having, different ways. There's so many ways to get out a message, right? And in some ways we'll speak to you, some will speak to me. Like, I think we try as much as we can to maintain these two-layer approach.
Yeah, and I think this will tie a little bit into not this upcoming, but kind of back to sort of the stickiness of sticking with it, right? Like, it sometimes takes a little bit longer for the audience to find it or to train them into that thinking. Especially, I can see that on the Experian side, right? Like, new products trying to get away from just being known as credit, like that kind of in moving these new phrase. So we'll come back to that. I want to make sure we revisit that, but I wanted to kind of go a little bit deeper into our discussion as far as, we talked about the multi-channel audience, but now I want to get into sort of the regional and, even deeper layer audience targeting. Sam, you obviously have a ton of experience with NFL, right? Like multiple Sunday games in different markets depending on where you live. How are you guys kind of creatively optimizing for those experiences?
Yeah, so NFL and CBS is purely a regional product, aside from a few spot games here and there. So if you're in Los Angeles, you might get the Chargers game. If you're in Baltimore, you might get the Ravens game. At a high level, from a brand perspective, the spots that you already saw are what run nationwide, right? It's all nationwide. And so that's driving our upper funnel awareness. When it moves down to mid funnel and true acquisition marketing. We're pretty much regionalizing everything that we do from a creative perspective and an audience perspective. We rely a lot on technology partners to be able to operationalize that and build creatives in real time that are communicating matchups, time of tune-in, in some cases scoring, things like that help drive the immediacy and the localization of the product. It's important for people to actually, get what they expect to get when they come onto our platforms. And then same thing occurs on platform as well in terms of engaging our current consumers, completely regionalizing everything that we do. We've also developed partnerships with the teams themselves. So CBS's rights package is primarily AFC teams, so Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, teams like that. So we've developed programs with them that help drive local fan base interaction with our brand as well. So utilizing their channels and their direct communications with the fans as well as say, they want to watch the game, they're primed for this, partnering with them to help deliver our message at the local level with that type of activation.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you mentioned in our original conversation too is sort of one of the questions as a kind of a film guy myself, like, the term fix it and post, I hate that. You guys really kind of approach this in a pre-production, kind of getting ahead of this, but you're making some reasonable guesses, or how are you guys kind of tackling that part of it?
Well, I think one of your earlier questions was just about operationalizing all this creative in general, and I think part of it for us has just been trying to bank as much as we can from our shoots and from our creative planning to be able to roll out over the course of the season. I think, creative fatigue sets in, but you also don't want to lose your core message, so we've tried to develop these kind of hero units like you saw, but then multiple versions of them that we can see, okay, what type of asset is working in the market? Like you said, over 2 weeks, let these run, find their audiences, but what's not working, we need to pull out and replace with something else. So from that perspective, we've just tried to build a tonnage of things to be able to put out over a season because we can't be constantly going through our creative process and building new things. And then, at the local level, it's building out toolkits and partnerships that allow, quick turnaround from a creative perspective on whether it's an Amazon or a Roku or in, real-time bidding environments.
Very cool, very cool. Thanks for explaining that. Simona, kind of wanting to go, maybe not so much, obviously regional is important as well, but then kind of also in your sort of layers of what you guys offer. So how are you guys, how do you strategize targeting those like high propensity states for products like auto insurance? New, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the very few forays that we have into DMA targeting. For the most part, we're a national player. Even when we buy NFL, we buy on a national level. And then there's, the simulcast. Each market will get their game. We don't really get too deep into that unless we're partnered with an NFL player, and then we'll heavy up on that specific team matchups. But for auto insurance, because it's so regulated at state level, and the carriers vary from state to state, and there's all these moving pieces, that's where we had to stay really nimble and kind of change our approach. We started with strictly looking at conversion data by state, so first-party data, kind of like how things are looking from the start. And then we started to triangulate different data points at state level. We're able to see, which carriers are in that particular state. What's the cost of auto insurance? How does it vary by car make? All these different elements. And the goal of that is to basically determine if, what are the states where consumers will see the most savings through our product, right? Then we're applying another targeting level where, like for example, if somebody has teenage drivers in their family, that gets pretty expensive, right? So that's where we can provide a lot of savings with our Experian Auto Marketplace. And it will literally show you different offers and different options that apply to you specifically in the amount that you're saving. So these are some things that we take into consideration. Obviously, somebody who's in market for auto insurance, and then we look at performance through, say, top 10, 15 states, and then we kind of adjust the mix as we go. We mostly run on CTV. I think that's the environment where you're able to make the most determinations quicker. It's been a while since I've touched, like a local linear TV campaign.
Yeah.
Those were the days. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we have what, 5 more minutes left, so just wanted to kind of bring it home with obviously moving our way all the way down to those non-traditional partnerships, influencers. Sam, what's been successful for you guys in the Paramount Plus side in tackling that?
I think it's longer term partnerships with influencers. I think we were talking about this on our prep call, but I think when you vulture into an audience or you parachute into someone's audience, it feels like that. I think, I listen to a lot of podcasts. There's certain, influencers that I follow. And the brands that I feel like are most effective with those partnerships are ones that are willing to play the long game with them rather than try to seize a specific moment with them. And so Linda Dawn, our partnership with her was great because when we got her into our national campaign, but she's been engaged throughout the season, even from a non-contract perspective. Like when she sees things happening, the NFL swell into the pop culture moment, she's coming back on her own to bring her spots to life again because she saw the value in the partnership. And I think Jordy mentioned it too on his talk about how these creators are starting to have feedback into the spots that they're doing with us, which is really cool. So when we pitched Linda on the spot, she came back and said, hey, I think these are fun, but some fine tuning here and here would make it more authentic to my audience. Like her being the creepy girlfriend is so true to what she does, or creepy ex-girlfriend, or whatever. That turns it into something more than just, a 1-week buy with whomever. It builds the partnership and makes the viewing audience feel like they're a part of it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, Simona, that kind of leads into you with your partnership with Jake. Because I would love to kind of know a little bit more about the BTS or the BS with Jake Paul. I'll see myself out, actually. But, we were talking about what Sam was saying is like, how do we make it native, right? And, being more of a traditional kind of brand and moving into a podcast sort of foray where F-bombs are flying. How are you guys getting that buy-in?
You're gonna get me in trouble here. Well, first I want to say I agree with everything that Sam just said. I'm taking notes because I feel like every brand has to get better at building that longer-term partnership. That's where authenticity comes to play and all the good stuff. Back to Jake Paul. So this all started with kind of like how we've been one of the OG advertisers on Netflix. When they went to ad supported. They introduced us to Jake Paul and team. We were talking about sponsoring the fight, and that was a pure brand play, right? Like you see the logo on the rope, you see it in the backdrop at the weigh-in, and so on. But then we like to kind of double down on these things. So even when we were working with Travis Kelce, we were also on his podcast, New Heights. And it's really fun and it's really challenging, especially for a brand like Experian. We're heavily regulated. We love our compliance department, but then we have to have these conversations as marketers. We have to explain even within our org that, for something to work, it cannot be forced. It cannot be boxed into what we think the messaging should be. So working with Jake Paul on his BS with Jake Paul podcast and the Better team, it just really opened up kind of like how we planned for it, and we started with a scripted readout for him, but then we also had an integration in the show where he actually, he just talks to his buddies about Experian, and we're like, let's just let him do it. Like, we have the power of J. Paul talking about Experian. We're not going to tell him how to do it. We provided some guidelines. We hoped for the best, but that's kind of how it went.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, so it's having that trust, right? And like you guys both said, kind of aligning to the right partners from the get-go, making sure it's not forced or that they will find the right way, and maybe there's a little bit of guidance and wiggle room that you need to apply.
Yeah, and letting them give you feedback. It's something that Sam said as well. They know their audience and they know their stuff the most. So,
yeah, okay. I think we're out of time. Do you have enough for one more? Quick steps. I'm just going to take one quick liberty here. 2025, what are we doing?
More Taylor Swift.
Hell yeah.
Marketing. I don't know. Is everyone in here has a Taylor Swift strategy?
what's your
Maybe we'll do Jake Paul. He sounds like he can be brand safe. Yeah, we'll trade. Well, I'll take Kelsey too.
Yeah.
You can have Swift.
Take Mama too.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
That's what you see next year.
Simona?
Well, we are going to bring something a little bit new with not just partnering with a celebrity or influencer, but a celebrity couple. I think we want to see the couple dynamics in our creatives and how they engage with each other. A lot of NFL players or different types of influencers, they bring their better half into their podcast, into some of the creatives, and we learned from Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, but let's just do it from the start. So early on next year, you'll see that. We're also going to work with influencers to produce more educational type creatives. We just started the Experian School series on YouTube, where you have this really colorful professor called Unita Expert, and she's talking about all the things they didn't teach you in school about credit.
Gosh, we needed that.
Build on that.
We needed that.
So she's still learning.
Yeah, the millennial in me was like, shit, we should have had that. Anyways, Sam and Simona, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you again for Innovators and Sony for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.